I came back to Charlotte for Christmas hoping, naively, foolishly, that this year might feel different. But the moment I stepped through my mother's doorway and saw that gold bow glinting through the living room window, I knew I'd walked straight into another carefully staged reminder of where I stood in this family. $117,000 sitting in the driveway like a billboard announcing my irrelevance. And then, resting neatly on the dining table with a thin red string curled beside it, the $5 red bow she left for me. Not wrapped on a gift, not attached to anything meaningful, just lying there, like a placeholder. An afterthought, a message. My mother didn't need to say the words out loud because I'd heard them my entire life. Know your place, Emily. She only confirmed it later, when I asked if this was really my Christmas gift, and she shrugged like it was the most natural thing in the world, saying, "That's fair, fair," as if fairness had ever existed in this house. As if handing one daughter a luxury SUV with a giant gold bow and handing the other a faded red ribbon from the clearance bin was anything close to equal. I should have turned around and left right then, but I didn't. I stayed. I stayed long enough to watch the night unravel into something I still struggle to name. The house smelled like cinnamon and mulled cider, the kind of scent magazines call holiday warmth. But that sweetness felt artificial to me, like everything my mother tried so hard to curate for Christmas morning. She was polishing silverware at the kitchen island when I walked in, wearing a forest green cashmere sweater and pearl earrings that never left her jewelry rotation in December. Her smile didn't reach her eyes when she saw me. "You're late," she said, as though I'd missed a shift instead of arriving exactly at the time she told me to be there. "I hit some traffic," I answered quietly. She didn't look up again. Sabrina was already in the living room posing with the Lexus in the driveway behind her, framed perfectly by the oversized bay windows my parents installed last year. She had positioned herself so the sunlight hit her hair at the exact angle that made it look like spun gold. She'd straightened it, curled the ends, and put on a glittery champagne-colored blouse that practically screamed influencer. Her phone was mounted on a tripod. Of course she was live streaming. "Oh my God, Em," she squealed when she finally noticed me. "Come stand next to me. I need a shot with both daughters. Mom says it'll look good on Facebook." I swallowed hard and forced myself to walk toward her. The $5 bow felt heavier than it should in my coat pocket, as if it were absorbing years of disappointment all at once. I stood beside her, careful not to block her angle or step into her light, and she looped an arm through mine like we were best friends. Like we didn't grow up in a house where I was always the responsible one and she was always the adored one. "Smile," she chirped. I smiled. A small one, the kind meant to blend into the background. It was the only kind they ever wanted from me. My father walked in behind me then, cheeks flushed from being outside. He had the keys to Sabrina's Lexus dangling from 2 fingers, holding them up like a prize on a televised giveaway. "My baby girl deserves something special," he said proudly, always loudly enough for neighbors to hear through the open garage. Baby girl, 25 years old, works 15 hours a week at a boutique and spends the rest of her time on makeup tutorials. But she was the baby girl, and well, I'd always just been Emily. While they all gushed over the car, I stepped toward the dining room table where someone, probably my mother, had placed the little red bow dead center, like an exhibit. I picked it up. It was flimsy, curling at the edges, the kind of thing a store puts next to the checkout line for impulse buyers. $5? I knew it was $5 because I'd seen the exact same ones in the clearance bin at Michael's last week when I bought supplies for my office's holiday gift exchange. My mother materialized beside me, smoothing her sweater. "Don't lose that," she said sharply. "I thought it was sweet." "What is it?" I asked, my voice even. "A bow," she replied. "You can use it on something you buy for yourself. I figured it was practical." Practical. That word again. Their favorite adjective for me. Practical, reliable, sensible. The traits they weaponized every time they needed to justify giving Sabrina the world. "It's nice," I said, forcing neutrality. "You should be grateful. she added, as if gratitude was an obligation, not a feeling. Not everyone gets anything for Christmas. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment I wondered if she even heard herself, if she registered the absurdity of her own logic. Her eyes darted toward the window where Sabrina was still filming, her expression glowing with pride. My mother's mouth softened at the sight of Sabrina, then hardened again when she looked back at me. "Help me set the table," she said brusquely. "Your sister is too excited to focus." Of course she was. I followed her into the kitchen, grabbed the stack of plates and started laying them out in the dining room. The plates were heavy, ivory porcelain with gold trim, only used for holidays. Sabrina had broken one in high school and my mother nearly fainted, but when Sabrina blamed the countertop, she'd accepted it without question. If I'd broken one, I would still be hearing about it. As I set the places, I heard Sabrina screech laugh from the living room. Something about my dream car, and brand deals are going to love this. She was already mapping out how to turn their gift into profit. My mother would be thrilled. The bow in my pocket crackled when I shifted, reminding me it was there, reminding me of who I was here. When the table was ready, I stepped into the doorway and watched my family through the frame. Sabrina twirling her keys, my father wiping imaginary dust from the car window, my mother adjusting Sabrina's hair like she was prepping her for a commercial shoot. They looked complete, like a perfect unit. And none of them noticed I wasn't standing with them anymore. Brunch was supposed to start at 11, but relatives began filtering in early. I barely had time to adjust my posture before someone pinched my arm lightly. "There's my busy girl," my Aunt Denise said, giving me the same tight-lipped smile she always did, the one that suggested pride but somehow always felt condescending. "Hi, Aunt Denise," I said. "How's work? Still doing numbers?" "Accounting," I replied. Yes, very important, very technical." She patted my arm like I was a child. "Not everyone is meant for the spotlight like Sabrina. Some people are meant to support." The words landed like pebbles tossed at my ribs, tiny and irritating but cumulative. Sabrina floated into the dining room then, all glossy hair and perfect teeth. "Aunt Denise," she exclaimed, "did you see my car yet?" "You mean that gorgeous Lexus?" "Of course I did," my aunt squealed, grabbing Sabrina's hands. "Your parents really outdid themselves." Sabrina beamed, then deliberately glanced at the red bow sitting next to my plate. "And Emily got something too," she said with a sweetness so fake I could taste the sugar. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. My mother's voice rang out from behind me. "Emily, could you move your seat down one? Sabrina should sit in the center. Cameras get that angle better." Right. Of course. Cameras. I shifted my chair down without a word. When everyone finally gathered at the table, my father raised his mimosa. "Let's start by sharing what we're grateful for this year." Sabrina went first, naturally. "I'm grateful for my amazing parents who believe in me and support my dreams," she said, holding up her keys. "And for this incredible Lexus. Seriously, I can't believe it." More laughter, more praise. My mother followed, saying she was grateful for family unity and blessings overflowing. Then eyes turned to me. I cleared my throat. "I'm grateful for clarity," I said. A beat of silence. "Clarity?" Sabrina repeated, suspicion dripping from her voice. "Clarity," I confirmed. My mother narrowed her eyes. She could sense something shifting, even if she didn't understand it yet. "Well, that's thoughtful," my father said stiffly. "Let's eat before it gets cold." The rest of brunch passed with Sabrina holding court about how she planned to film a Drive With Me vlog later, followed by a car reveal video. At one point she said, "This is exactly the aesthetic my followers expect." And my mother nodded like she'd just heard a profound philosophical statement. Meanwhile, I served casserole, passed napkins, refilled glasses, the role I'd always played, but something in me felt detached, observing, cataloging, quietly breaking. After brunch, I slipped outside onto the porch to breathe. The December air stung my cheeks, but the cold was a relief compared to the suffocating warmth of the dining room. I wrapped my arms around myself and watched a few flecks of snow start to fall. Behind me, the door opened. "Emily?" I turned. It was Mrs. Landry, our elderly neighbor from across the street. She lived alone after her husband passed, and had always been kind in that gentle, deliberate way older women can be. "You look pale," she said softly. "I'm fine," I lied. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Child, I saw that scene inside. You shouldn't let them treat you like that." My throat tightened. "It's always been this way." Her eyes were full of understanding, and something else, something protective. "It doesn't have to stay that way," she said. Before I could answer, the door swung open again and Sabrina stuck her head out. "Oh, there you are, Em. Mom's freaking out because you wandered off. We're taking group photos." Of course they were. Mrs. Landry touched my arm one last time. "Remember what I said?" Inside, the house hummed with chaos again. Sabrina posing, my mother snapping photos, my father directing everyone like it was a magazine shoot, and me, the background prop. I took my place beside Sabrina, smiling just enough to keep the peace, just enough to keep them from noticing what was quietly unraveling inside me. Later, when I sat alone in my old childhood bedroom, now repurposed as a guest room devoid of anything that resembled me, I looked at the little red bow still in my coat pocket. $5. And suddenly everything in my life made sense, everything they had ever said, ever done, ever prioritized, ever ignored. This wasn't favoritism, this wasn't oversight, this wasn't forgetfulness, this was a choice. And for the first time in 29 years, I felt the early stirrings of a choice of my own, a choice that would change the course of everything that came after. I don't know why I still expected the afternoon to feel easier, but by the time brunch ended and people started spilling into the living room, the tension in my chest had settled into something sharp, something cold, something that hummed beneath my skin like an electric wire ready to snap. The house was louder now, a crowd of relatives weaving through every room, laughing, reminiscing, asking Sabrina for selfies beside the Lexus in the driveway. Meanwhile, I hovered near the dining room doorway, invisible unless someone needed a task done. My mother didn't bother pretending otherwise. She walked past me with a tray of cookies in one hand and said, without looking, "Emily, refill the cider. Sabrina shouldn't be carrying heavy things today." Heavy things. Sabrina had lifted nothing heavier than a hairdryer this year, but sure, carrying a 2-pound cider pitcher might ruin her. I picked up the glass carafe anyway and moved toward the kitchen. My Aunt June stopped me halfway, her eyes bright with admiration. "Emily, your sister's car is just stunning. I mean, a Lexus LX 600? That's... what do people say these days? Next level?" I forced a polite smile. "It's definitely something." "She deserves it," Aunt June added quickly. "She adds so much energy to the family." She didn't say what I added. No one ever did. Sabrina's laughter floated from the living room, high and effortless, like bells chiming over fresh snow. She wasn't even trying to hide her delight at the attention. I watched her through the doorway as I poured cider into small ceramic mugs. She had positioned herself at the center of the room again, where every eye could fall on her. Her glittery blouse shimmered under the warm ceiling lights as she gave another dramatic retelling of the moment she saw her car. "You guys, I literally thought Dad was pranking me," she said, hands flailing theatrically. "Like, I was waiting for the cameras to pop out, but no, it was really mine. My own Lexus. I mean, who even gets that for Christmas?" "Special girls," my mother chimed in, positioning herself next to her shining daughter. I swallowed and kept pouring. When I brought the filled mugs into the living room, my mother waved vaguely toward an empty side table. "Just put them there, and please try not to spill anything on the rug." As if I didn't grow up cleaning every spill she ever accused me of making. I set the mugs down carefully, checking twice to make sure nothing dripped. Sabrina didn't notice. She was too busy posing with the gold bow still sitting on the Lexus hood outside. Mom, make sure you get the angle where the grill looks shiny, she instructed. Of course, sweetheart. Of course. I moved back toward the dining room, hoping for a moment of quiet, but my father stepped into my path. There you are, he said mildly, though his tone carried that underlying impatience I'd known all my life. Sabrina needs help with the new phone mount for her car videos. She wants it ready before she takes her first drive. She can install a phone mount, I said softly. What was that? He asked, eyebrows raising like I'd said something shocking. I'll help, I corrected quickly, even though my stomach clenched. Good girl, he said, patting my arm with absent-minded approval, like one might do for a reliable employee completing a simple task. I walked outside into the cold driveway, where the Lexus gleamed under the winter sun. Sabrina tossed me the box without looking. Open it for me, she said, still filming her own face. I'm doing a pre-drive check-in for my followers. I opened the package, attached the mount, tightened the screws, angled it the way I assumed she'd want. Something flattering, slightly above eye level. She finally looked over. Oh, okay, yeah, that's decent, she commented. At least you're good at something. She said it with a flippant laugh, but I felt it, sharp as glass, lodging in my ribs. I'm glad I could help, I murmured. You should be, she replied, still smiling for the camera. Inside again, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. My face looked pale, faded, like I'd been rubbed out slightly at the edges. The $5 bow pressed against the inside of my coat felt heavier each time I moved. As I stepped into the kitchen, my mother turned abruptly, nearly bumping into me. Emily, she snapped, as if my presence were an inconvenience. Don't hover. I'm just grabbing some water, I said quietly. Well, be quick about it. Sabrina needs to rest. She's been so overwhelmed with attention. Overwhelmed with attention. The irony could have knocked me flat. I filled a glass and took a sip, trying to ground myself. The room around me blurred with movement. Relatives praising Sabrina, my father repeating the price of the Lexus like it was a badge of honor, my mother beaming with pride. It felt like a celebration I hadn't been invited to despite standing in the center of it. Then someone tapped my shoulder gently. It was my cousin Lily, a soft-spoken girl with curly black hair and kind brown eyes. She leaned close and whispered, Hey, I just wanted to say I saw the bow, and I'm really sorry. The words hit harder than I expected. Thanks, I managed. It's fine. It's not, Lily said, shaking her head. I saw your face when Sabrina opened the Lexus. Your parents didn't even look at you. My throat tightened. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be, she murmured before stepping away. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. When I finally moved back into the living room, the conversations around me seemed louder than before. My parents were telling some neighbors that Sabrina was launching her influencer journey and needed the right tools to succeed. The Lexus was a necessary investment. They said these things with such conviction that for anyone listening, it sounded perfectly reasonable. And Emily? One of the neighbors asked politely. My mother cleared her throat. Emily's always been self-sufficient. She doesn't need much from us. I froze. Sabrina giggled. Yeah, Em's like undemanding. It's a good thing, honestly. Makes life easier. Someone laughed lightly. Someone else murmured agreement. And I stood there, invisible in plain sight. The room suddenly felt too warm, too loud, too crowded. I stepped back into the hallway, gripping the banister, trying to steady my breathing. My chest felt tight, as if someone had cinched a rope around my ribs. Then a voice cut through the noise. Emily? I turned to see Mrs. Landry standing in the doorway again, hands tucked into her coat sleeves. She had slipped inside quietly, unnoticed by my boisterous family. She spoke softly. I forgot something earlier. But I was watching through the window, and I need to tell you something. I swallowed. What is it? She looked toward the living room, then back at me. You're worth more than they ever taught you to believe. The words cracked something inside me, something brittle, something long ignored. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, my mother appeared behind me. "There you are," she said sharply, ignoring the neighbor. "We're doing photos again. Sabrina wants one with you holding the bow. It'll be cute." "It's not cute," I said before I could stop myself. My mother blinked, clearly taken aback. "Excuse me?" "It's not cute," I repeated, quieter this time. "It's humiliating." Her face hardened instantly. "Don't start. Not today." Sabrina breezed into the hallway, phone in hand. "Mom, what's taking so long? We need to catch the light." "Your sister is being difficult," my mother said. Sabrina rolled her eyes dramatically. "Em, please, don't ruin the aesthetic." Aesthetic. That was all this day had ever been for them. A performance, a curated family Christmas for their friends, neighbors, and followers. And I was nothing more than the dull prop that made Sabrina shine brighter. "I need some air," I muttered. My mother called after me, "Don't wander off again." But I kept walking. Out the front door. Onto the porch. Into the cold. The sharp air hit my face, grounding me. I leaned against the railing and stared at the snow gathering in thin lines along the driveway. My breath clouded in front of me, white and trembling. Behind me, the muffled sounds of celebration continued. Laughter, clinking glasses, Sabrina's endless monologue about her brand. My mother's voice rising above the rest as she narrated the perfect Christmas to anyone who would listen. None of them noticed I'd left the room. None of them ever did. I don't know how long I stood there, but eventually the cold seeped through my coat. I closed my fingers around the bow in my pocket and pulled it out. It looked smaller outside the artificial warmth of the house. Pathetic. A child's craft project reject. I turned it over in my hand, watching the red sheen catch the fading sunlight. A $5 bow against a $117,000 Lexus. A metaphor so blunt even Sabrina could have understood it if she bothered looking past her reflection. But she didn't. I heard the door open behind me. My father stepped out, looking annoyed. "What are you doing out here? People are asking where you went." I just needed a minute. "Well, hurry up," he said, as though my internal state was an inconvenience. "Your sister wants you in her video." Of course she did. He went back inside before I could respond. I stayed where I was, gripping the bow tightly. Across the street, Mrs. Landry's lights flickered on again. She stood silhouetted by her living room window for a moment before raising a small hand in a simple, quiet gesture of solidarity. It was the first moment all day that didn't feel like a performance. I inhaled deeply, feeling something shift in my chest, like the smallest crack forming in a long-sealed wall. I didn't know it yet, but that crack would be the beginning of everything. I knew something in me had shifted when Sabrina dragged everyone into the sunroom for more photos, and I didn't automatically follow. Instead, I drifted back into the dining room, pretending to adjust the napkins while trying to quiet the rising hum inside my chest. The house felt too warm again, too full, too bright. The laughter, the camera clicks, the overly enthusiastic compliments, it all pressed against my spine like weight I couldn't hold much longer. And yet, every time I tried to take a step back, someone pulled me forward just to shove me into the edges of the frame again. My mother walked in with a stack of dessert plates, her expression pinched with the constant strain of pretending everything was perfect. "Emily, those napkins are crooked," she said, setting the plates down with a thud. I looked at the napkins. They were perfectly aligned. "They look fine," I replied quietly. She frowned as though my words personally offended her. "They're uneven. Honestly, I don't know why you always rush through simple tasks. Here, look." She reached over, took one napkin, and folded it in the elaborate twist she'd insisted on teaching me every Christmas since I was 10. As if I hadn't done it 100 times. "You need to pay attention," she muttered. "Your sister would have done this right the first time." My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. There was no point. It didn't matter what I did or how well I did it. Sabrina was the benchmark, the standard, the sun around which the entire Carter house orbited. I adjusted the remaining napkins mechanically, letting my mother's criticisms wash over me like static. Through the doorway, I could hear Sabrina giggling as someone told her how radiant she looked beside the Lexus, beside her dream car, beside the 117,000 validation of her existence. My mother inhaled sharply, staring out the dining room window. "Stand up straight, Emily. You're slouching again." "I'm not slouching," I said, straightening anyway. "Well, you look tired. Maybe that's why." She reached out and brushed invisible lint from my shoulder, her movements brisk and assessing. "You should really put more effort into your appearance. Today is important." "Important for who?" I wanted to ask, but she'd already turned away, her walk purposeful as she hurried back to Sabrina's orbit. I finished setting the silverware, listening to the conversation swirling from the living room like a distant storm. "I can't believe your parents did that. Sabrina, that car is insane. You must be their favorite. And then the worst one. You always bring so much joy to this family." I closed my eyes. Meanwhile, I brought stability, practicality, responsibility. I brought things that kept the family functioning, but never gave them anything to brag about. When I opened my eyes again, my Aunt Denise was standing in the doorway holding a mug of cider, smiling at the scene like it belonged in a holiday commercial. "Sweetheart, could you grab the honey from the kitchen?" she asked. "Sure," I murmured. I walked into the kitchen just as my father strode in, rummaging through drawers, muttering about scissors. "Dad?" I offered carefully. "Need help?" No, I've got it," he said, slamming one drawer shut. "Sabrina needs the bow retied for her second photo set." I blinked. "The gold bow? What other bow?" "Right," I said softly. He found the scissors, smiled with satisfaction, and hurried back to Sabrina without another word. For a moment I stood alone in the kitchen, the silence pressing against my ears. I looked at my hands, the hands that had cooked meals, cleaned rooms, helped with bills, stayed late, showed up early, and somehow never did enough to earn the praise Sabrina gained simply by breathing. I tried to shake it off. The dining room was nearly full now. People were taking their seats for dessert, chattering loudly, commenting on the table setup. My mother, of course, credited Sabrina for the design idea. "Sabrina chose the color scheme," she said proudly, even though the only thing Sabrina contributed was saying, "Blue looks nice." When I approached the table again, Sabrina caught my arm. "Em, can you stand next to me for one more picture?" she asked. "I want to show my followers what sister balance looks like." "Sister balance?" I repeated. "Yeah," she laughed. "Like you're the grounded one, I'm the star, it's a whole aesthetic." Aesthetic. Always the aesthetic. I bit down on my tongue hard enough to taste metal. "Sure," I said quietly. We posed. Her smile was blinding, mine barely visible. The camera flashed, and I knew the photo would show exactly what every photo showed. Sabrina glowing, me dimming beside her. When it was over, I stepped back to the edge of the room. I always gravitated to the edges. Edges felt safer. "Emily," my mother said sharply from across the table, "can you grab more napkins? We're almost out." Of course we were. Of course it was my job. I nodded and moved toward the hallway closet. As I reached for the handle, something caught my eye. My mother's coat draped over the chair nearby. The fabric shifted slightly when she moved earlier, and now a corner of the mysterious yellow envelope peeked out from the inner pocket. The one I'd noticed twice already today. The handwriting on the edge was faint, but visible. S. College. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't touch it. I didn't dare. But I stared at it long enough for something heavy and familiar to settle into the pit of my stomach, a weight that had lived there for years, a weight I'd always explained away. Maybe I shouldn't have. I pulled my hand back from the closet door, suddenly forgetting what I'd come looking for. My heart pounded too loudly in my ears. Before I could collect myself, Sabrina called from the living room. "Em, we're cutting the pecan pie. Come take pictures for me." Of course. The family archivist, the built-in photographer, the convenient older sister whose job it was to hold the camera. "I'll be right there," I said. When I stepped into the living room, everyone was gathered around the dessert table. My mother was slicing the pie while Sabrina filmed the process from 3 different angles. "Mom, tilt it more," Sabrina said. "The caramel glaze looks better when the light hits it from the side." "Like this?" my mother asked eagerly. "Yes, perfect. Get over here and take a few behind-the-scenes shots. My followers love those." I forced my legs to move, forced my hands to steady enough to hold the phone. As I took pictures, I faintly heard relatives comment on how good Sabrina was at directing. "She's got such presence. She's a natural leader. She's going places." No one said anything about the person holding the camera. The laughter grew louder, the lights grew brighter, and my chest felt tighter and tighter. I took the last picture and stepped away, pretending I needed water just to catch my breath. In the kitchen, my Aunt Patricia stood drying a serving dish, her face soft with concern. "You seem quiet today," she said gently. "I'm always quiet," I answered. "I know," she replied, setting the dish down. "But today feels different. Are you all right, Emily?" I swallowed hard. "Just tired." "The holidays can be exhausting," she said, "especially for the ones who do the most work." Something in her tone made me pause. Before I could respond, Sabrina's voice carried from the hallway, calling for more photos. I shook my head slightly, trying to ground myself again. "Do you need help?" Aunt Patricia asked. "No," I whispered. "I'm fine." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she didn't push. After dessert, people slowly drifted out of the dining room to lounge in the living room again. I stayed behind to clear plates, stacking them carefully so the china wouldn't chip. My hands moved automatically, like they'd learned the dance of cleanup years ago. As I scraped leftover pie into the trash, I heard my cousin Jennifer squeal from the living room. "You're so lucky, Sabrina. Seriously, your parents are amazing." Sabrina flipped her hair and said, "I know." Of course she did. I rinsed the plates, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters. Not a single person offered to help. Not a single person noticed what I was doing. When I finished, I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes for a moment, letting the hum of the dishwasher drown out the noise from the other rooms. That's when my Aunt Patricia slipped quietly into the kitchen. "You're doing all this alone?" she asked softly. "It's fine," I said automatically. Her gaze softened. "Emily, you know it's not fine." I didn't respond. She hesitated, then stepped closer. "Your mother, she's always been harder on you. But today was painful to watch." My throat tightened. "I don't know what you mean." Her expression was sad, knowing. "Yes, you do." I blinked, looked away. The kitchen lights blurred slightly. Patricia sighed softly. "You deserve more than this." She left before I could answer. For a long moment I stood alone, hands braced against the counter, chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. The truth had been there all day, simmering beneath the surface, flaring in small humiliations, revealing itself in the cracks of every interaction. It wasn't new. I'd just finally stopped ignoring it. I stepped out to get some air again, pushing open the back door this time. The cold hit my skin with a jolt, but this time it felt good, sharper, cleansing. The yard was quiet, untouched by the chaos inside. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, catching the glow of the porch light. As I stood there, the silence wrapped around me like a blanket. I thought of Sabrina's words. "I'm the star, you're the grounded one." I thought of my mother's criticisms, my father's dismissiveness, the envelope, the bow, the car, the roles we'd all been assigned without consent. The wind brushed my hair across my cheek, and I whispered into the night air, "I'm done pretending." Footsteps shuffled behind me. I didn't turn. It was my mother's voice that came next. "Emily," she said sharply, "why are you out here again? Sabrina is about to film her gratitude speech." Gratitude? I almost laughed. When I didn't move, her tone sharpened. "Don't make this day about you." I swallowed down the words, trying to claw out of my throat. I turned slowly, faced her, and said, "I'm not making it about me." She scoffed. "Then act like it." Sabrina's voice echoed faintly from inside, bright and oblivious. "Is Emily coming? I want her in the background." My mother looked back toward the living room and sighed impatiently. "Hurry up," she ordered. "We don't have time for your moods." She walked away before I could respond. I stayed where I was for a long moment, letting the cold steal my spine. When I finally stepped back into the house, Sabrina was already perched in front of the Christmas tree, phone in hand, hair perfect again. She beamed at me. "Okay, Em, stand right there. I want you slightly off to the side so the tree lights don't reflect off your glasses. Ready?" I stepped into place, barely in the frame, barely part of the picture, barely acknowledged. And for the first time in my life, I felt exactly what that meant. Not just today, but always. The house felt louder after brunch, as if every voice had risen an octave and every laugh hit a sharper pitch. I walked back into the living room feeling that same hollow tug in my chest, the kind that comes after you've swallowed one humiliation too many. Sabrina was sprawled across the love seat, recounting the Lexus reveal to another wave of relatives who had arrived late. My mother was flitting around her like a stylist on a film set, fixing her hair, adjusting her blouse, making sure the bow and keys stayed visible in every photo. My father hovered nearby, fielding questions about the car's features with the proud enthusiasm of a man who believed he'd invested in a promising future. Meanwhile, I was drifting at the edges again, invisible until someone needed help. "Emily," my mother snapped the moment she noticed me. "The dessert forks aren't out." "Why aren't they out?" "I'll get them," I said, already turning toward the kitchen. "Please hurry. Sabrina wants everyone to try the peppermint cheesecake while the light is still good for pictures." Of course she did. I walked toward the kitchen, the hum of chatter behind me like a swarm of bees. Inside, the counters were cluttered with serving trays, bowls, and glass dishes. I started sorting through the utensil drawer for the forks when the door behind me swung open. My father stepped in, rubbing his temples. "Your mother is on edge," he muttered. "She usually is," I replied quietly. He gave me a stiff smile. "Just don't start anything today, okay? Sabrina deserves to enjoy her moment." "I wasn't starting anything." "I'm just saying," he said, lifting his hands in surrender. "Let's keep things peaceful." Peaceful. That word meant, don't upset your mother. It always had. He left without waiting for a response, and I returned to the forks, my fingers shaking slightly. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something deeper, heavier, like a truth I had ignored for years was beginning to surface. I carried the forks into the dining room just as Sabrina floated through the doorway, glowing with delight. "There you are," she chirped. "Come on, Em, we're filming a quick thank you speech for Mom and Dad. You should be in the background." "In the background?" "Yes," she said, as if it were obvious. "It looks more family-oriented, balanced." Balanced. I almost laughed. "I'll be there in a minute," I said. Sabrina pouted. "Em, don't be difficult." My mother appeared behind her. "Emily, your sister is asking nicely." I swallowed hard. I said I'd be there. My mother's eyes narrowed, suspicious. "You've been off today." "I'm fine." "Well, try to act like it. It's Christmas." I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste blood. Sabrina twirled back into the living room, and my mother followed. I took a slow breath, then turned toward the dining table to set the forks. My hands moved automatically. Place, align, straighten, repeat. When my mother re-entered the room with a stack of folded napkins, she paused beside me. "What is this?" she demanded. I looked up. "What?" "These napkins. They're not folded properly." "I folded them how you showed me," I said evenly. "No, clearly you weren't paying attention." She grabbed one, unfolding it dramatically. "Look, it's supposed to be the diamond fold, not this sloppy thing." "It's the same fold I do every year." "Well, it's wrong this year." I stared at her, feeling something inside me tighten. "Okay," I said. "I'll redo them." She exhaled through her nose. "Honestly, Emily, you always make things harder than they need to be." She left the napkin in my hands and walked away. My fingers trembled slightly as I refolded the napkin. It wasn't the napkin that mattered. It never was. It was the principle, the pattern, the way nothing I did was ever enough, while Sabrina's efforts, or lack of effort, were treated like genius. My reflection in the glass of the china cabinet caught my eye briefly, shoulders rounded, expression tired, presence dimmed. It felt like looking at a shadow rather than a person. That was when I noticed the coat draped over the chair again, my mother's coat. The corner of the yellow envelope peeked from the pocket. This time I stepped closer. College. The letters were faint, but unmistakable. A breath caught in my throat. Aunt Patricia's voice startled me. "Emily?" I turned quickly. "Yeah?" She stepped closer, her brow creased with worry. "You're pale. Sit down for a moment." "I'm fine." "No," she said firmly, surprising me. "You've been walking around like you're holding your breath." I swallowed. Aunt Patricia had always been quieter than the others, softer around the edges. She looked at me the way someone looks when they see an animal that's been kicked one too many times. "I'm okay," I said again, though my voice cracked. She hesitated. "I just want you to know what happened earlier with the bow. It was cruel." My throat tightened. Hearing someone else say it out loud made something sting deep in my chest. "Thank you," I whispered. She gave my arm a gentle squeeze and left the room. I looked back at the envelope, my pulse pounding. Before I could reach for it or walk away, the living room erupted with chatter again. "Emily!" my mother called sharply. "Come participate. Sabrina wants to do gratitude statements." I stepped into the living room, my insides twisting. My parents and Sabrina sat on the couch with relatives gathered around. They dimmed the lights to make the Christmas tree glow more prominently in the background. Sabrina lifted her phone for a video. "Okay, family," she said, overly chipper. "Let's talk about gratitude. Mom, you go first." My mother beamed. "I'm grateful for this beautiful family, and for Sabrina's accomplishments. She's such a blessing." Applause. My father went next. "I'm grateful for my girls." He put a heavy hand on Sabrina's shoulder. "Especially seeing Sabrina thrive." Another round of praise. Then Sabrina, "I'm grateful for my parents and for the opportunities they give me. They've always believed in my dreams." Everyone leaned in, smiling, nodding. Then eyes shifted to me. "Your turn, Em," Sabrina said. My heart pounded. They wanted a performance, a script, a polite lie wrapped in holiday cheer. I swallowed hard. "I'm grateful for the truth," I said quietly. The room fell silent. Sabrina frowned. "What truth?" I looked at her. "A lot of things are clearer to me today." My mother stiffened. "Emily," she warned, "stop being cryptic. If you're going to participate, participate properly." "I did," I replied. My father cleared his throat. "Let's move on." "No," Sabrina interrupted, leaning forward. "What truth? What does that even mean?" I met her eyes. "It means I finally understand where I stand in this family." A few relatives shifted uncomfortably. My mother bristled. "Emily, that's enough," she snapped. "It's Christmas, don't ruin it." Sabrina laughed suddenly. "Oh my God, are you sulking? Over a bow?" She giggled. "You always get like this when the attention isn't on you." The words hit me like cold water. I exhaled slowly. "I don't care about the attention." "Please," Sabrina scoffed. "You've been jealous your whole life." Something inside me cracked, quietly, softly, but undeniably. "I'm not jealous," I said. "I'm tired." My mother rolled her eyes. "Here we go." I looked at her. "You don't hear me. You never have." "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "We treat you fairly." "Do you?" I said. "You think handing Sabrina a luxury car and giving me a $5 bow is fair?" It's symbolic, she snapped. You're practical. You don't need extravagant things. But Sabrina does? I asked. Yes, she said, blunt and unapologetic. She needs more support. The room felt suddenly too still. Sabrina smirked. Well, at least she admits it. My father looked away. I felt my pulse in my ears as I spoke. And what about that envelope you keep hiding? My mother's eyes widened with a fear I'd never seen from her before. What envelope? She said too quickly. The yellow one, I said. The one that says S. College. Gasps rippled through a few relatives. My mother's voice sharpened to a blade. That's none of your business. It is, I whispered, if it was mine first. Her face drained of color. Sabrina's smirk faltered. My father looked like he might bolt from the room. Sabrina broke the silence first. Mom, she said slowly, what is she talking about? My mother lifted her chin. Nothing. Emily is reading too much into things, as usual. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. My father opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, eyes darting to my mother like a frightened animal. I stared at all of them, the truth clicking into place so cleanly it almost hurt. You were never supposed to tell me, I said softly. My mother stepped forward. Emily, she hissed, drop it. No. Her eyes narrowed. Don't push me. Then don't lie to me. The room seemed to inhale all at once. For 30 years I had backed down, quieted myself, accepted the scraps of affection handed to me with the expectation of gratitude. But not this time. My mother's jaw tightened. If you walk out of this room, don't expect sympathy later. Sabrina crossed her arms. Seriously, Em, stop being dramatic. That word again. Dramatic, emotional, difficult. The labels they used whenever I expressed even the slightest discomfort. I looked around the room, faces watching, judging, dismissing, and felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not rage, something colder, clearer, resolve. Without a word, I turned and walked toward the hallway. Emily, my mother snapped. I didn't look back. Her voice followed me like claws scraping against my spine. You always ruin everything. Sabrina is the one who matters today, not you. Even then, I didn't stop. Not when Sabrina scoffed loudly behind me. Not when my father called my name half-heartedly. Not when my mother said, if she leaves now, she'll regret it. I walked to my old bedroom, closed the door quietly, and pressed my back against it. My hands shook. My breath trembled. My heart pounded. But for the first time all day, I felt like I was breathing air that belonged to me. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, letting the sharp, cold air from outside fade from my skin before stepping back into the heat of the house. The contrast made my head swim. I could still hear faint laughter from the living room. Sabrina's laugh most of all, bright and ringing like a bell someone kept striking just to prove it still worked. The holiday lights flickered across the walls, casting warm glows that didn't match how the house felt. Nothing about this place felt warm anymore. Not the decorations, not the food, not the chatter, especially not the people. I walked slowly toward the dining room, the soft thud of my footsteps swallowed by the carpeting. The napkins I had folded earlier lined the table like obedient soldiers. Perfect now, because I had made them perfect. My mother's corrections still echoed in my mind. Not like that. Pay attention. Sabrina would have done it right the first time. I picked up a plate from the edge of the table. The porcelain felt heavier than it should, cold against my fingers. I wasn't sure why I grabbed it, maybe out of habit, maybe because my body was so used to doing something for everyone else. But before I could take a step, I heard footsteps behind me. Emily, my mother said. I set the plate down. She walked in carrying a stack of serving spoons, her expression tight with something between irritation and suspicion. You disappeared again, she said. You can't keep vanishing in the middle of family gatherings. Sabrina is trying to make this day special. I just needed a minute, I answered. It's always a minute with you, she shot back. You make everything so tense. I wasn't trying to. Then don't, she said. Just be helpful, be pleasant. I swallowed the burn rising in my throat. Okay. Good, she said briskly, turning her attention to the table. Now help me set out the dessert. I nodded, even though every part of me recoiled at the thought. But before I could move, my mother's voice sharpened. Not that spoon. That's for serving mashed potatoes, not cheesecake. It's just a spoon, I murmured. It's not just a spoon, she snapped. Details matter. Image matters. Image. That was all this house had ever cared about. I stepped back, letting her take control. She relished it, the way she always did when someone else surrendered. Sabrina breezed into the room then, golden and glossy, cheeks flushed from the warmth and attention. Mom, are we doing the cheesecake shot now? She asked, holding her phone up to frame herself in the front camera. Yes, sweetie, my mother replied instantly. Emily, go stand over there and make sure the tree lights don't reflect off the plates. I did as I was told, even though something inside my chest tightened with every step. Sabrina leaned into the camera. Okay, guys, we're about to cut into the most amazing peppermint cheesecake ever. Dad, get the knife shot. My father hurried over. My mother angled the dessert plate. Sabrina tossed her hair just so. And I stood where they pointed, occupying space without being part of anything. People gathered around, laughing, clapping, watching Sabrina like she was a celebrity filming a holiday special. She turned to me suddenly. Move a little left, she said. You're blocking the twinkle lights. I moved. You look stiff, she added with a pout. Relax your shoulders. I forced my shoulders down. My mother let out a small sigh of annoyance. Honestly, Emily, just lighten your expression. This is supposed to be joyful. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They weren't listening anyway. The cheesecake was passed around. People made dramatic noises of delight. Sabrina pretended she'd baked it even though our mother had done all the work. I sat down next to the corner of the table, the spot no one else wanted. A few relatives glanced my way, but no one said anything. Sabrina took a big bite and made an exaggerated face for her phone. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's so creamy. Mom's a baking genius. My mother flushed, thrilled. Oh, stop, she said. It's nothing. It's not nothing, I murmured under my breath. You spent all morning on it. But she didn't hear me. No one ever heard me. The room buzzed with conversation about the Lexus, the bow, Sabrina's plans for the car reveal video later. My name didn't come up once. I stood slowly, moving toward the hallway in hopes that no one would notice or care. But someone did. Emily, Sabrina called, where are you going? Just stepping out for a second. You've been stepping out all day, she said with a small laugh. Are you, allergic to Christmas joy? A few relatives chuckled. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my voice level. I just need a moment. Sabrina waved her hand dramatically. Fine, but don't take too long. We need you in the group shots. Need. They always needed me when there was work to be done or a picture to fill. Never when it mattered. I walked toward the back door, but before I could reach it, a hand landed gently on my arm. It was Aunt Patricia. Come with me, she whispered. I followed her onto the porch where the cold air enveloped us like a blanket of truth. Snowflakes drifted in slow circles, landing quietly on the railing. She turned to me, her breath visible in the cold. I don't know how you've endured this for so long. I swallowed hard. It's always been this way. She nodded slowly. But it doesn't have to stay this way. I stared down at my boots, watching the snow melt on the edges. I saw how your mother spoke to you, she continued. And Sabrina, I'm sorry, sweetheart. No one deserves that. My throat tightened. It's fine, I whispered. It's not fine, she said firmly. You deserve better. I blinked rapidly as the cold burned behind my eyes. Before I could respond, she glanced through the window toward the dining room. Your parents, they're hiding something. Her voice lowered. And your mother is terrified you'll find out. I froze. "What do you mean?" I whispered. "I shouldn't say too much," she replied. "But that envelope she keeps clutching, it's not nothing." A pulse of cold shot through my veins. "What's in it?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't know the whole truth, but I know it involves money, and I know it's not what she wants Sabrina to hear, much less you." My pulse hammered in my throat. Aunt Patricia touched my arm. "Just be careful, Emily." The back door opened abruptly. "Emily!" my mother snapped. "We're starting the video montage. Honestly, must you wander off every 5 minutes?" Aunt Patricia squeezed my hand once, then stepped away. I followed my mother back inside. The living room was a mess of holiday lights and carefully arranged chaos. Sabrina stood near the tree with my father on one side and my mother on the other, all three smiling wide for the camera. I stepped in silently, taking my place a step behind them, exactly where they always put me. "That's perfect," Sabrina said, adjusting her phone. "We're filming the gratitude segment now." I stood still, letting their words roll over me. "I'm grateful for Sabrina's hard work," my mother said with rehearsed pride. "I'm grateful for my beautiful family," my father said, patting Sabrina's shoulder. "I'm grateful for opportunities and dreams coming true," Sabrina said brightly. Then their eyes turned, almost reluctantly, toward me. "Emily?" Sabrina prompted. "Your turn." I took a breath. "I'm grateful for clarity," I said. A sharp silence fell over the room. Sabrina tilted her head. "You said that earlier." "I meant it earlier," I said quietly. "And I mean it now." My mother's jaw tightened. "Emily," she said through gritted teeth, "this is absolutely not the time to make vague statements." "It wasn't vague," I replied. "You're ruining the footage," Sabrina said, exasperated. "Can you not, just for one day, be dramatic?" My voice stayed level. "I'm not being dramatic." "Yes," Sabrina snapped. "You are." My father cleared his throat. "Let's not do this." But something inside me had already cracked open. "I saw the envelope," I said, not raising my voice but not softening it either. My mother stiffened. "What envelope?" "The yellow one," I said. "The one that says S. College." The color drained from her face. A few relatives exchanged glances. My father looked at the floor. Sabrina blinked. "Mom, what's she talking about?" My mother straightened, her voice icy. "She's mistaken." "No," I replied calmly. "I'm not." Sabrina scoffed. Seriously? Are you digging through Mom's stuff now?" "I wasn't digging," I said. "It fell out of her coat earlier." My mother stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Emily, enough! You are not going to start something in front of our family." I held her gaze. "Then you shouldn't have left it lying around." Gasps echoed through the room. My father murmured, "Emily," but I didn't stop. "Why does it say college, Mom?" Sabrina looked between us, confusion growing into something sharper. "Mom, what's going on?" My mother swallowed hard, her composure cracking. "It's none of your concern." "It is," I said. "If it was supposed to be mine." Sabrina's eyes widened. My father whispered, "Emily, please!" And my mother shouted, "Enough!" But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. The truth was already unraveling in front of all of them. And even if they tried to shove it back into the cracks, pretend it was nothing, pretend I was imagining things, they couldn't. Not this time. The room buzzed with tension, eyes bouncing between us like spectators at a match none of them expected. "I'm done pretending everything is fine," I said quietly. The silence that followed was louder than all the noise that had filled that house all day. I didn't know exactly what came next. But I knew something had broken, and something else had started to rise in its place. I closed the door to the guest room behind me and pressed my back against it, letting the quiet swallow me whole. The muffled noise from the living room, my mother's sharp voice, Sabrina's complaints, the low hum of relatives whispering, felt distant now, as if the house itself was exhaling in exhaustion. Or maybe that was just me. The room was spotless, as if no one had ever lived here. My childhood had been stripped from it years ago. No posters, no books, no trace that I'd once slept beneath this roof as a daughter they claimed to love. The beige walls, the perfumed bedding, the neutral throw pillows, it all felt staged, generic, replaceable. Perhaps that was fitting. I ran a hand over my face, my fingers trembling. I wasn't sure if it was anger, sadness, frustration, or some mix of emotions that didn't even have names yet. Everything inside me felt tangled, sharp, and unbearably loud. But I forced myself onto the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, trying to breathe through the rising storm in my chest. A soft knock came at the door. I didn't answer. The knock came again, gentle this time. Emily? It was Lily, my cousin. The kind one. The one who'd noticed the bow. I inhaled shakily. Come in. She slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. Her eyes were soft, mouth turned down in a sympathetic frown. What happened? She whispered. Everyone out there looks like they're waiting for a bomb to go off. I huffed a dry laugh. That sounds about right. She stepped closer. Do you want to talk? I looked at her. The concern, the patience, the respect, and felt something twist painfully in my chest. How strange that a cousin who barely saw me each year could show me more tenderness in 1 minute than my mother had in a decade. I'm just tired, I said, and today was a lot. She sat beside me. The bow was awful. I blinked fast. It's not just the bow. I know, she said softly. There was a silence between us, comfortable, not suffocating. Then she asked quietly, "What was the envelope?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Something my mother didn't want me to see. Did you open it? No, but I think I know what it is. She waited. I swallowed hard. I think it's the college fund they told me didn't exist. Her eyes widened. Emily. No. It had my initial once, I said, my voice trembling. But now it has Sabrina's. Lily covered her mouth with her hand. Your parents wouldn't... They did, I whispered. I'm sure of it. She squeezed my knee gently. I'm so sorry. I nodded, blinking away the burn behind my eyes. The door suddenly flew open without warning. My mother stood in the doorway, face taut with fury. Lily, she said, voice sharp. Give us a moment. Lily looked at me, hesitant. It's okay, I whispered. Lily rose slowly and brushed my shoulder before slipping past my mother. My mother shut the door behind her, jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitch. What do you think you're doing? She hissed. Taking a minute, I said quietly. You embarrassed me in front of the entire family. I didn't embarrass you, I replied. I asked a question. She stepped closer, pointing a finger at me. You had no right to bring up that envelope. You left it in the open. It wasn't meant for you, she snapped. Why not? I asked. She faltered for a beat, then recovered. Because it doesn't concern you. But it used to, I whispered. Her eyes flashed with something, guilt perhaps, or fear, but she buried it quickly. Emily, you're acting childish, she said, voice rising. You always do this. You make everything about you. All I wanted was the truth. What truth? She barked. That we didn't waste money on things you didn't need? That we chose to invest in Sabrina because she actually required help? I stared at her. So you admit it? She crossed her arms, chin lifting. We made decisions based on practicality. Practicality? I repeated softly. You mean favoritism, she scoffed. Stop being dramatic. We have always treated you girls equally. No, you haven't. Yes, we have, she insisted. I rose to my feet slowly. You gave me a $5 bow and you gave her a luxury car. That's different, she snapped. She needed the car. I needed respect. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise? Anger? Shame? but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Emily," she said, voice colder now, "if you continue down this path, this needless rebellion, you will regret it. This family will not tolerate disrespect." I swallowed. "You mean you won't tolerate me standing up for myself?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. An entire childhood answered for her. We stared at each other in tense silence until she stepped back toward the door. "You have two choices," she said quietly. "Come back to the living room, act normal, and apologize to Sabrina, or stay in here and sulk like a child." I didn't say a word. She opened the door slightly, then added one final dagger. "This attitude," she said, eyes narrowing, "is why you're alone at 28. Men don't want women who carry grudges." My breath caught in my throat, and before I could respond, she walked out, slamming the door behind her. The silence afterward felt heavier than before, thick, suffocating. I sank onto the bed, heart pounding. That was it. That was the moment the last thread snapped. My chest ached, not from sadness but from clarity, from the weight of a truth I'd spent years avoiding. They were never going to change. I reached for my phone. My hands shook as I typed out a text. "Are you still free in the morning?" I sent to Gina. Her reply came within seconds. "Of course, do you need anything?" I stared at the screen, then typed, "Help me move some things." "Absolutely. Want to talk?" "Tomorrow," I wrote. "I'll explain everything." I set the phone down slowly. As I sat there, absorbing the finality of my decision, I heard faint arguing outside. Sabrina whining about her ruined video flow, my mother defending her, my father telling everyone to calm down. No one mentioned me. Not really, not with concern, just with annoyance. I stood, walked to the small dresser, and pulled out the clothes I'd brought, folded them neatly, placing them into my overnight bag. I gathered my charger, my brush, my toiletries, tucking each item into place. This time my hands didn't shake. I wasn't running. I was freeing myself. I zipped the bag and placed it on the floor beside the bed. Then I sat again, waiting, breathing, thinking. The house eventually grew quieter as the night deepened. Relatives left one by one. Sabrina moved upstairs, loudly complaining about her ruined social media plans. My mother fussed everywhere, rearranging things she claimed were out of place. My father muttered about how Christmas had turned stressful. The irony wasn't lost on me. Finally, around 11, the house settled into a thick quiet. I lay down fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Not sleeping, just waiting. Thinking of every Christmas as a child, every birthday, every dismissal. Every time I'd been asked to understand why Sabrina got more. Every time I'd been told I was strong, independent, capable. Code words for "you don't get help." Every time my mother had brushed off my accomplishments while celebrating Sabrina for simply existing. At some point, I sat up and reached for my phone again. The screen glowed softly in the dim room. I opened my notes app. My fingers hovered over the keys. Then I began to type. "Thank you for the clarity this Christmas provided. I wish you all the fairness you said I should be grateful for. My key is on the counter. Please don't contact me." I stared at the message. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't even angry. It was honest. I saved it and closed the app. Then I lay back down, listening to the old house breathe around me. Every creak, every faint shift of the structure, every distant sound felt like a countdown. When the clock hit 1 in the morning, I sat up. The house was silent. My decision was not. I stood, picked up my bag, and stepped toward the door. When I opened it, the hallway was dark, shadows stretching across the walls. I didn't turn on the light. I didn't need to. I remembered every uneven step, every corner, every creak in the floorboards from years of sneaking to the kitchen for water as a teenager. I walked slowly, carefully, toward the stairs. And somewhere between the second and third step, I realized something with startling clarity. This was the calmest I had felt all day. Or maybe in years. I kept walking, down the stairs, toward a freedom I had never once been offered, but was finally ready to take for myself. The stairs creaked softly beneath my feet, each sound punctuated by the heavy silence of a sleeping house. I moved slowly, deliberately, testing the weight of every step the way I had as a child sneaking cookies from the kitchen after bedtime. Back then, it was a game. Tonight, it felt like escape, liberation, a quiet rupture from decades of swallowing pain disguised as duty. The hallway below was dim, lit only by the small nightlight my mother insisted on keeping plugged in near the pantry. Its faint yellow glow washed across the kitchen tile and the polished hardwood floor, more comforting than anything in this house had ever been. My bag felt heavier than it should, dragging at my arm the way my family's expectations had dragged at me all my life. But this weight was different, chosen, controlled, mine. I stepped into the kitchen and exhaled, the breath shuddering out of me. Every sound felt too loud, the soft rustle of my coat, the muted thud of my bag as I set it gently on the stool beside the counter. The stainless steel appliances reflected the faint light, giving the room a cold, sterile glow. Everything was so perfect, shiny, curated, the illusion of a family that had everything under control. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my house key, the one I'd kept since I was 18, the one they'd always used as proof that their door was open to me, even though the door itself had only ever opened one way. I placed the key on the counter with a soft click. Then I took out my phone, opened the Notes app, and reread the message I'd typed hours before. I copied it onto a sheet of paper from the junk drawer, my handwriting steady despite the tremor in my chest. Thank you for the clarity this Christmas provided. I wish you all the fairness you said I should be grateful for. My key is on the counter. Please don't contact me. I folded the note once, placed it beside the key, and stepped back. A deep, quiet peace settled over me, like the room itself was exhaling with me. Then my gaze drifted toward the living room, toward the coffee table where I'd left the $5 red bow earlier. Its faded ribbon looked even sadder in the darkened room. A part of me wanted to leave it there as proof, evidence, a reminder. But something made me step closer. Maybe I wanted to own it. Maybe I wanted to remember what this day had taught me. Maybe I wanted to carry it with me as a promise that I would never again accept so little from people who claimed to love me. I picked it up gently, folding the ends so it fit into my bag. The house was so quiet I could hear the faint ticking of the living room clock and the low hum of the heating system. The smell of pine from the Christmas tree drifted through the air, mixed with the lingering sweetness of peppermint cheesecake. I zipped my coat up to my chin. The front door loomed in the shadows, a dark rectangle against the soft glow of the nightlight. I moved toward it slowly, careful not to hit the table or brush against the wall. When I reached the door, I placed my hand on the cold metal of the deadbolt. I paused, not because I was uncertain, but because this felt like a moment worth honoring. A goodbye, not to my family, but to the version of myself who had believed their treatment was normal, necessary, inevitable. I turned the lock, wincing at the small click, then eased the door open. The December air rushed in, icy and sharp, stealing my breath for a moment. The neighborhood was quiet, blanketed in fresh snow that glowed under the soft halo of the streetlights. My breath fogged in front of me, curling into the night. I stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me until it clicked softly into place. The driveway stretched before me, white with untouched snow except for the massive tire tracks of the Lexus. The car sat gleaming under a layer of frost, the gold bow now damp and drooping with the weight of snowflakes. My mother had left the porch lights on, probably for the video shoot Sabrina planned to finish tomorrow morning. The glow spread across the driveway, illuminating the stark contrast between Sabrina's luxury vehicle and my car parked on the street. I walked past the Lexus, feeling the cold sting of resentment fade into something quieter. Something almost sad. This car represented everything about my family, where their love went, where their priorities lived, where I didn't fit. I reached my own car, an older silver Honda with a dented back bumper and a faint squeak in the right door hinge. But it was mine, paid for with my money, Every repair, every payment, every tank of gas, mine. I opened the passenger door and placed my bag inside. The red bow peeked from the top of the zipper. Before climbing in, I turned back toward the house one last time. The lights glowed softly behind the curtains, framing the life I was leaving behind. A life built on hierarchy and favoritism and silence. A life where my value was measured in usefulness instead of love. I whispered to the cold air, "Goodbye." I got into my car and closed the door. The engine sputtered for a moment, old, stubborn, reliable, then started with a low growl. The heater blew cold air first, then warmed slowly. I pulled away from the curb, the snow crunching under my tires. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, its edges blurring under the falling snow. Soon it disappeared around the corner. The rest of the drive was quiet. Louisville at 2 a.m. was a map of empty streets and flickering stoplights. I passed by dark storefronts, quiet intersections, and rows of houses wrapped in holiday decorations that looked softer, kinder from a distance. The farther I drove, the more my shoulders loosened. My jaw unclenched. The pulsing behind my eyes faded. By the time I reached my apartment building, I felt lighter. I parked in my usual spot, number 32, and stepped into the crisp winter air again. The building's exterior lights glowed warmly against the brick. A lonely wreath hung on the front door, slightly crooked. As I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, I realized I wasn't thinking about my mother's voice, or Sabrina's laughter, or my father's silence. I was thinking about my future. Inside my apartment, the warmth hit me immediately. The faint scent of vanilla from the candle I'd burned the day before lingered in the air. My books lined the shelves neatly. Plants rested on windowsills, leaves catching the streetlight. This place wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it for a moment, feeling my body relax in a way it hadn't in years. My bag sat at my feet. I reached for it, pulled out the red bow, and set it on the kitchen counter. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I whispered, "Never again." I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street below. Snow fell steadily now, coating everything in gentle white. I could almost feel the shift inside me, an unseen line being drawn between who I had been and who I would become. I made a cup of tea, wrapping my hands around the warm mug as I sat on my small sofa. The heater hummed, the snow fell, and the world outside slept. It was peaceful. Not the forced holiday peace of my parents' house, but real, earned peace. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt safe. I don't know when I fell asleep. But when I woke the next morning to sunlight streaming across the room, I knew one thing with certainty. I had finally chosen myself. And I wouldn't go back, not for an apology, not for an explanation, not for anything. My life was mine now, and I was ready to live it. When I woke the next morning, the sunlight coming through my blinds felt different. Cleaner somehow, as if the air itself had been rinsed overnight. For a few seconds I lay still, blinking at the soft light warming my duvet. My body was heavy, but not with regret, with relief, the deep kind, the kind that sinks into your bones once you've stopped pretending. I turned my head and looked around my apartment, the small bookshelf across from my bed, the thrift store dresser I'd refinished myself, the framed print of a watercolor skyline I'd bought at a local art fair. Every detail felt like a reminder. This was my space, my life, my choice. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't move to pick it up. I knew exactly who it wasn't and exactly who it was. Instead, I sat up, stretching for a long moment before swinging my legs out of bed. The hardwood floor was cold under my feet as I walked to the kitchen. I started the coffee maker, the familiar hum grounding me. By the time the first mug was poured, there was a soft knock at my door. I peeked through the peephole and saw Gina's familiar face. Messy bun, oversized scarf, coffee in hand, concern etched into her expression. I opened the door. Her eyes widened. "You look calm." "Do I?" I asked, stepping aside to let her in. She walked in, setting her coffee on the counter. Calm in a post-apocalyptic way, like someone who survived a war zone and is now processing it in stages. That's surprisingly accurate. She studied me for a moment. Okay, she said finally. Tell me everything. I sat at the kitchen table with my mug cupped between both hands, and I told her, all of it. The Lexus reveal, the bow, my mother's comments, Sabrina's mockery, the envelope, the confrontation, the guest room argument, the last straw. Gina listened, silent at first, then slowly shaking her head, eyes hardening as the story went on. When I finished, she exhaled sharply. Emily, that's abuse. I swallowed. I know. No, really. She leaned forward. That's emotional abuse. Favoritism on steroids, gaslighting, belittling. Your mother weaponized every insecurity you've ever had. Your sister too. Your father enabled it. That entire environment is toxic. A part of me wanted to defend them. Habit, maybe. Childhood programming. But the words didn't come. Instead, I whispered, I'm tired of being invisible. Gina nodded. Then let's make you un-invisible. The sentence landed with a warmth I didn't expect. She reached for my hand. You did the right thing leaving. You saved yourself. I nodded, though my throat tightened again. It feels like I'm grieving something, even though it was never good. You're allowed to grieve, she said softly. You're grieving the idea of the family you wanted them to be, not the one they actually were. I exhaled shakily. That makes sense. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that wraps around a person instead of pressing down on them. Finally, she clapped her hands once. Okay, game plan. We moved the boxes from your storage unit today. We rearrange this place so it feels more home. We make tea. We eat leftover Christmas cookies. And we do not, under any circumstances, respond to your family. I almost smiled. You're very bossy this morning. It's my superpower, she said proudly. Before we left, I forced myself to look at my phone. The notification count was absurd. 47 missed calls, 32 messages. Some from my father, most from my mother, a few from Sabrina. The preview texts alone made my stomach clench. Mom. Where are you? Why is your key on the counter? Mom. Explain yourself now. Mom. This is selfish and dramatic. Sabrina. Did you seriously leave over a bow? OMG, get help. Dad. Please call us, please. Mom. If you don't return by noon, we'll have to talk about consequences. Consequences. That word had been her favorite weapon since I was little. It had controlled me, contained me, until last night. I locked the screen and put the phone face down on the table. I'll block them later, I said. Good, Gina replied. Let them yell into the void. We drove to the storage unit on the edge of town, the road still slick from the previous night's snowfall. I carried boxes labeled old journals, books, winter clothes, photo albums, the remnants of a life half lived in the shadows. Gina carried the heavier ones, insisting she was built different, even though she nearly toppled into a snowbank twice. By early afternoon, my apartment was fuller, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Books lined the shelves, blankets covered the sofa, plants reclaimed corners. Little pieces of me filled every space. As I hung a string of soft lights above my bed, Gina flopped onto the couch dramatically. Okay, she said. Moment of truth. I turned. What? Now that you've reclaimed your life, how do you feel? I paused. I took a deep breath, and I smiled. Soft, steady, real. Free. She sat up, eyes shining. Then let's protect that freedom. We went to grab lunch from a nearby cafe, then returned to the apartment. I finally picked up my phone again, not to respond but to look, one last time. The messages had grown worse. Mom. You should be ashamed. Mom. Everyone is talking about your tantrum. Sabrina. Why do you always ruin things for me? Dad. Your mother is very upset. Come home. Mom. We expect an apology. Mom. Are you mentally okay? Mom. Answer. Then the last one. Mom, if you don't call by 5 p.m., don't expect this family to be there when you inevitably come crawling back. I stared at the message for a few long seconds. Then, slowly, I opened my settings. I blocked my mother, then my father, then Sabrina. One by one. Each tap felt like a door closing softly, shutting out a storm. Gina watched quietly, then nodded. Good, that's it. Take back your peace. I set the phone down on the table. And for the first time since childhood, the silence didn't feel threatening. It felt like oxygen. We spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning, rearranging, laughing about nothing, talking about everything. When evening settled, Gina ordered Thai food, and we ate cross-legged on the floor like two teenagers having a sleepover. By the time she left around 8, the sky outside had turned a deep indigo. I walked her to the door. You call me if you need anything, she said. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I will, I promised. And I meant it. Because now I knew what it felt like to have someone in my life who wasn't waiting to use my vulnerability against me. When I closed the door behind her, I leaned my forehead against the wood for a moment, letting the quiet settle. I walked back to the living room, turned off the overhead lights, and switched on the little table lamp beside the couch. Warm amber light filled the room. Peaceful. Safe. I looked at the counter, where the red bow sat. I picked it up, turned it in my hands. Felt nothing for it now, no sting, no humiliation. Just clarity. I set it gently in the drawer beside my desk. Not as a wound, as a reminder, a boundary marker, a promise, never again. I sat on the couch, pulling a blanket over my legs. Outside, snow continued to fall in slow drifting flakes, making the world look softer, quieter. I curled up with a book. My phone stayed silent on the table. And for the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a second chance. The first week after Christmas felt strangely quiet, in a way my body didn't know how to process. I woke up every morning expecting the familiar heaviness, the bracing tension of anticipating someone else's disappointment, but it didn't come. Instead, there was stillness. A gentle kind. A spacious kind. The kind that made me wonder if this was what normal people felt like every day. Work was my anchor. Returning to Hollowgate Systems was like stepping into a different world, one where competence mattered more than birth order and kindness wasn't conditional. When I walked through the glass doors on Tuesday morning, the receptionist, Dorothy, greeted me with her usual smile. "Morning, sweetheart. Hope your holiday wasn't too chaotic." I smiled softly. "It was clarifying." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a new one." "Long story," I said as I headed toward the elevator. Upstairs, my office felt more welcoming than usual. My stack of pending files was exactly where I left it. My favorite pen still clipped to the notebook I used for planning. Everything was orderly, predictable, mine. My supervisor, Thomas, knocked on my open door as I hung my coat. "You're back," he said with a grin. "We missed you." There was warmth in his voice. True, uncomplicated warmth. It made something in my chest loosen. "I missed being here." He stepped inside, hands in his pockets. "You seem lighter." I laughed softly. "That seems to be the review from everyone lately." "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And by the way, your quarter-end audit numbers? Fantastic work." A quiet pride bloomed in me. Pride I didn't have to bury or disguise. "Thank you," I said. He gave my shoulder a friendly pat. "Let me know if you need anything." As he left, I realized something simple and bittersweet. This office had been more family to me than my actual family ever had. The morning passed smoothly. Emails, team check-ins, report summaries. Around noon, I microwaved leftovers in the break room and sat at my usual table. A few co-workers drifted in, chatting about their holiday trips. "How was your Christmas, Emily?" one of them asked. "Eventful," I said calmly. And ultimately, good. Glad to hear it, she said, smiling warmly. The second week brought the first test. It started with an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "From your father." My pulse quickened, but I clicked it open anyway. "Emily, since you blocked our numbers, I'm emailing you from a different account. Your mother is distraught. She believes you had some kind of emotional episode. This is all a misunderstanding. You are welcome home anytime, after you apologize." Dad. I stared at the message for a long moment, then felt something unexpected. Clarity. Again. Not the painful kind, the empowering kind. They still didn't understand. They weren't trying to, they just wanted the old version of me back. The quiet one, the obedient one, the invisible one. I deleted the email. A minute later, I blocked the address. Then I made myself a cup of tea and returned to work as if nothing had happened. By the third week, things escalated. It was a Thursday afternoon when I received a call from the front desk. "Emily?" Dorothy's voice came through, low and uneasy. "Your mother is on the line. She asked to be transferred to you." My stomach dropped. "Did she say why?" "No," Dorothy said. "But, do you want me to put her through?" I closed my eyes, then opened them. "No," I said firmly. "Please block her number from the company system." There was a pause, then a gentle, "Of course." The moment I hung up, my office felt incredibly quiet, but not empty. Quiet in a comforting way, like the universe had turned down the volume so I could think. But the peace didn't last long. My personal phone buzzed as soon as I got home. A voicemail. I didn't want to listen, but something inside me said I needed to hear it. If only to remind myself I'd made the right choice. My mother's voice flooded through the speaker. "Emily, this is unacceptable. I had to call your workplace because you're acting irrationally. You owe us an apology. Sabrina is devastated. Your father is worried sick. You need to come home and fix this." Then, more sharply, "You're the one ruining this family, not us." I deleted the voicemail, then blocked the new number she used. 2 days later, another message from a different number. This time from Sabrina. "Oh my God, Emily, Mom is crying because of you. Are you happy? You ruined Christmas and now everything is a mess. Why can't you just stop being jealous and come home?" Delete. Block. After that, I stopped listening entirely. The moment I saw unfamiliar area codes, I blocked them. 3 weeks without contact became 4, 4 became 5. In the 5th week, something unexpected happened. My Aunt Patricia called, not from an unknown number, from the number I already knew, the number tied to comfort, not chaos. I hesitated only a moment before picking up. "Aunt Patricia?" I said. "Hi, sweetheart," she said gently. "I hope it's okay I called." I swallowed. "It is." A breath crackled on the line. "I want you to know I support you." Relief washed over me so quickly I had to sit down. "I didn't know that," I whispered. "I know your parents have been telling the family their version of things," she said carefully, calling it an emotional breakdown, saying you were upset over a misunderstanding. "A red bow," I said quietly. She huffed a dry laugh. "It was humiliating and cruel, and I told your mother that." "You did?" "Oh yes, and she didn't appreciate it." That startled a small smile from me. I imagined she didn't. "And that envelope?" she continued. "I asked your mother about it." My heart hammered. "What did she say?" "That it was none of my business," she said, "which only makes me more certain she's hiding something." I pinched the bridge of my nose. I knew it. "There's more," she said gently. "Your cousin Jennifer. She reached out to me. She's been thinking about the Lexus and the bow. She said she regrets not saying something that day." The corners of my vision blurred with sudden tears. "She didn't know the whole story," Aunt Patricia continued. "None of us did. But now we're starting to piece things together." A pause. "You were right to walk away." My throat closed. I wasn't sure, I whispered. Not entirely. You trusted your instincts, she said, and I am proud of you for choosing yourself. I covered my mouth with my hand, pressing back the emotion rising too quickly. Thank you, I managed. We talked for another 10 minutes, about life, work, ordinary things. It was the kind of conversation I'd craved for years without knowing how to ask for it. When I hung up, the silence in my apartment felt tender, not empty. I wasn't alone, not anymore. In the 6th week, something shifted inside me. My supervisor announced in our departmental meeting that we'd exceeded our quarterly goals by a significant margin. He credited me for restructuring the reporting system. And because of that, he said, turning toward me, there will be a promotion recommendation going to corporate next month. My heart skipped. Promotion? He nodded. Department manager. It's overdue. Applause erupted around the conference room. People clapped for me, people who saw me, people who valued me. When I returned to my office afterward, I closed the door, sat in my chair, and let myself absorb the moment slowly, piece by piece. A career I built, a home I chose, people who supported me, the beginnings of a life where I mattered. For the first time in 28 years, the voice in my head, the one shaped by my mother's criticisms, Sabrina's mockery, and my father's silence, grew quiet. And a new voice emerged, one that sounded like me, one that said, "You deserve this. You earned this. You were never the problem." The red bow sat in my drawer, undisturbed, irrelevant now, because I had something stronger, clarity, and I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. Winter in Louisville softened by late January, the bitter edge of December melting into something gentler. The sky stayed pale most mornings, streaked with soft blues and whites, and the air carried the kind of cold that nipped rather than bit. My life fell into a rhythm I hadn't expected, a quiet, calm one. I woke early, made coffee, tended to my plants, and went to work feeling a sense of purpose instead of dread. I came home to my warm apartment with its soft lights and mismatched pillows, cooked dinner, and read until sleep tugged at my eyelids. For the first time in my life, the background noise in my mind had faded. But peace isn't the same as forgetting. It never is. About 2 months after I left my parents' house, I learned something that made the world tilt beneath my feet again. It was a Saturday morning, and I was standing in line at a local bakery waiting for my order of cinnamon rolls. The place was warm and bustling, filled with chatter, the smell of sugar and butter thick in the air. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Patricia. "Call me when you're free," it read. "It's about your parents." My stomach tightened. I stepped outside into the brisk air, found a quiet corner of the sidewalk, and hit call. She picked up on the first ring. "Emily?" "Yeah." "Is everything okay?" A breath crackled through the line. "Your cousin Jennifer texted me this morning. She heard something from your parents, something you should know." My pulse quickened. "What is it?" A pause. Heavy. "Your parents had to refinance their house." I blinked. "What? Why?" "Because of the Lexus," she said softly. "The insurance didn't cover everything after the accident." I froze. "What accident?" Another pause. "Sabrina totaled the Lexus last week." The world went strangely quiet. I stared at the frost on the sidewalk, the faint crunching sound under my shoe as I shifted my weight. "How?" I whispered. "She was texting and driving," my aunt said. "Hit a guardrail on the I-64 entrance ramp. She's physically fine. The car isn't." A gust of wind whipped across my face. Of course she'd been texting. Of course she'd been careless with anything handed to her. Of course she hadn't earned it. "Your mother told the family it was a tragic mishap," Patricia continued. "But the truth is she's devastated about the money." I closed my eyes. Not devastated that Sabrina could have died. Devastated about the money. My voice came out small. "Why are you telling me this?" She didn't hesitate. Because I need you to hear something clearly. Their choices are catching up to them. You did not cause this. I swallowed hard. I didn't think I did. You still needed to hear it, she said. Especially because, well, your mother is telling people that your behavior on Christmas somehow destabilized the family and led to bad luck. My jaw clenched. Bad luck? A Lexus totaled is not karma, she added quickly, hearing the shift in my voice. It's carelessness. I exhaled slowly. Thank you for telling me. Of course, sweetheart, she said. Call me anytime. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the bakery window. I looked the same, but something about my own face seemed foreign, sharper, older, steadier. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It wasn't revenge, just distance. Distance so wide it felt like an ocean between us. The bakery worker waved to get my attention. I collected my cinnamon rolls and walked back to my car, hands numb from the cold. That night, I sat on my couch with a blanket around my shoulders, letting the quiet settle. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Aunt Patricia. Sabrina is complaining nonstop about having to drive a used car now, it read. Your mother is furious she doesn't seem grateful. I stared at the screen, then set the phone aside. I didn't reply. It wasn't my problem, not anymore. But the feeling lingered, like standing outside your childhood home and realizing the window you once looked through no longer shows a view you recognize. I turned off the lamp beside me and let the darkness fill the room. The following week, another surprise arrived. At work that Tuesday morning, a FedEx envelope sat on my desk. My name written in my mother's handwriting. My stomach twisted. I considered throwing it out, leaving it sealed forever. But something in me said facing it was better than wondering. So I opened it. Inside was a single check. Pay to the order of Emily Carter, amount $3,000 memo, college reimbursement. My breath caught. I stared at the ink until the numbers blurred. It wasn't a gift, not an apology, a payoff, a retroactive justification. A way to say, see, we didn't treat you unfairly, without ever admitting the years they had. My jaw tightened, fingers trembling as I folded the check back into the envelope. Underneath it, I found a note. Emily, we want to move forward. This should help you feel better about things. Mom. No apology, not even a handwritten signature, just the cold, printed word, Mom. The check felt like a stone in my palm, heavy, hollow. I walked to Thomas's office and knocked on the doorframe. Hey, you okay? He asked when he saw my face. I handed him the envelope. I need advice, not legal. Just human. He opened it, skimmed the contents, and let out a low whistle. Wow. I waited. He looked at me with a softness that reminded me of a father I never had. Do you need this money? I shook my head. Then don't take it, he said gently, unless it comes with the apology you deserve. I swallowed hard. It won't. Then they're not fixing anything, he said. They're trying to erase responsibility. His words struck something deep inside me. Responsibility. Yes, that was exactly it. I walked back to my office, sat down, and stared at the check again. Then, slowly, deliberately, I tore it cleanly in half. Then into quarters. Then into pieces so small they gathered in a snow-like pile on my desk. I felt lighter instantly. When I went home that evening, I emptied the shredded pieces into the trash, closed the lid, and washed my hands under warm water, feeling the ink bleed down the drain, leaving scraps of the past behind. A week later, my father emailed me again, from yet another new address. Emily, your mother is very sick. Her stress is affecting her health. Please respond. Dad. I stared at the email for a long, still minute, then replied, Please stop contacting me. Emily. No dramatic ending, no explanation, no guilt, just truth. I blocked the email. By early March, the promotion Thomas hinted at became official. I was named department manager. A raise. a team of 12 reporting directly to me, an office with a window overlooking the courtyard. Thomas presented the news at a company-wide meeting, proud as if I were his own daughter. My coworkers clapped, smiling genuinely. I didn't shrink, didn't minimize the achievement, didn't feel like a fraud. When I returned to my new office, I closed the door and let myself breathe it in. A view, a door with my name. Emily Carter, department manager, a future that belonged fully, undeniably to me. I sat at the desk and let a single tear slip down my cheek, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of realizing that I had built every piece of my life on my own, brick by brick, step by step, without favoritism, without handouts, without a family that ever saw my worth. I wiped the tear away and whispered to the room, "I did it." And the room, warm and sunlit and safe, seemed to whisper back, "Yes, you did, and you're just getting started." Spring arrived quietly, in a way I almost missed at first. The trees outside my apartment building budded before I noticed the shift in the air. The mornings felt less brittle. The afternoons smelled faintly of thawing earth and early blossoms. And the evenings, those long, reflective evenings, became softer somehow, as if the universe was offering me a gentler landing after everything I'd walked through. Life settled into a rhythm I had never known before, a healthy one, a peaceful one. I woke with purpose instead of dread. I drove to work with the windows cracked instead of clenched behind a steering wheel. My new office felt like a place I belonged, not a place I was borrowing. But peace doesn't erase the past. It doesn't even silence it. Not fully. It just gives you space to hear your own voice over the noise. And mine had grown stronger. It was on an early April morning, just as the sun was rising over the Louisville skyline outside my office window, that the next fracture reached me. Not from my mother this time. Not from my father. Not even from Sabrina. The message came from my cousin Jennifer. "Hey, I think you should know what your parents are saying about you." I stared at the text for a full minute before responding. "What now?" Her reply came quickly. "They're telling everyone you left because of mental instability, that you had some kind of breakdown on Christmas, that you're isolating yourself because you're unwell." My chest tightened. Not with fear, but with that worn-out, tired ache reserved for disappointments you've learned to expect. I typed slowly. "Is anyone believing it?" "Not really," Jennifer replied. "Not after how they treated you for years. But they're trying hard, especially your mom." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling tiles. Somewhere deep inside me, anger pulsed. Steady, controlled, no longer wild or overwhelming. Just truth. "Thanks for telling me," I wrote. "I'm okay, really." "I know," she replied, "and for what it's worth, I'm proud of you." I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I typed. Then I set my phone down and exhaled. The old me would have spiraled, would have doubted herself, would have wondered whether maybe, just maybe, she was the problem. But I wasn't her anymore. I had built too much, come too far. And I had proof of that. Proof that came the next week in an unexpected moment. I was standing in line at the grocery store after work, balancing a basket of vegetables and tea, when I heard someone say my name. "Emily?" I turned. It was Mrs. Landry, my parents' neighbor, the woman who'd watched me from her window that awful Christmas morning. She looked surprised, but her eyes softened. "Oh, sweetheart." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Hi, it's been a while." She stepped closer. "I've been hoping I'd run into you. I worried." I blinked. "About me?" "Of course." She lowered her voice. "I saw how your mother spoke to you. I saw how alone you were in that house." My breath caught. "I just want you to know," she continued gently, "you didn't imagine any of it." The validation hit me like sunlight breaking through a storm cloud. "I know," I whispered. She placed a hand on my arm, warm and steady. "You're stronger than you think." I swallowed past the burn in my throat. "Thank you." We exchanged a few more words before parting. And as I walked toward my car, I felt something inside me settle, like a puzzle piece sliding into place. I wasn't wrong to leave. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't unstable. I was free. But freedom has a way of inviting unexpected things into your life. Things you didn't know you were ready for until they arrived quietly, wrapped in gentleness. It began at work. A new engineer joined the corporate team, a lanky, soft-spoken man named Daniel. He had warm eyes, steady hands, and the kind of honest smile you could feel in your chest. We didn't speak much at first, just polite exchanges during meetings or hellos in the hallway, but little by little conversation found us. One afternoon, while I was at the copy machine, he approached with a stack of reports balanced in his arms. "Hey," he said, shifting the papers. "Congratulations again on the promotion. It's well deserved." I blinked, surprised. "Thank you. It still feels surreal." He smiled. "It shouldn't. You're good at what you do." The words landed softly, so softly I almost didn't recognize the sensation that followed. Warmth, not forced, not conditional, not purchased. Just warmth. Over the next weeks, we crossed paths more often. In meetings, in the break room, on the elevator. Sometimes he lingered. Sometimes I didn't mind. One morning, he stopped by my office with a mug of coffee. "I noticed you take yours with cinnamon," he said, setting it on my desk. "Thought you might like a refill." I blinked. "How did you know?" "You sprinkled some into your coffee last Tuesday," he said shyly. I noticed. Not because he was judging, or comparing, or ranking. He simply noticed. It was a revelation. We talked more after that, about work, our favorite books, weekend routines, oddly specific pet peeves. He told me his grandmother lived in Indiana and taught him how to bake her famous blueberry muffins. I told him about the thrift store dining table I refinished myself. He listened, really listened. And one Thursday afternoon, after a meeting, he walked beside me toward the elevator. "Emily," he said softly. I looked up. "Would you, maybe sometime, want to grab dinner?" There was no pressure in the question, no desperation, just genuine interest. I felt something shift inside me, fear maybe, or vulnerability, or the unfamiliar sensation of being seen without expectation. "I'd like that," I said quietly. And I meant it. We met for dinner at a small Italian restaurant near downtown. The lights were soft, the music low, the food warm and comforting. Our conversation flowed easily, laughter mixing with the aroma of garlic bread and tomato basil soup. He asked questions no one had ever asked me. He listened in ways I hadn't known were possible. It wasn't romantic in a dizzying, overwhelming way. It was gentle, safe, a beginning. When he walked me to my car afterward, a light breeze brushed past us, carrying the faint scent of spring. "I had a really good time," he said. "So did I." He hesitated, then added softly, "I'd like to see you again." I nodded. "Me too." His relief was quiet, genuine. He smiled, waved awkwardly, and walked to his car. I watched him go, feeling something warm and unfamiliar expand in my chest. Not love, not yet, but possibility. The kind that grows only when you're no longer drowning. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan slowly turning above me. I thought about the life I'd built in the months since leaving my parents' house. The silence that once frightened me now felt like a lullaby. My apartment was warm, lived in, a reflection of my own choices. And now, somehow, someone new was stepping into my orbit. Not to take, not to criticize, not to dim me, but simply to know me. For a moment I wondered what my mother would say if she saw me now, happy, stable, thriving, building a life on my own terms, opening myself to connection without her voice in my head. She wouldn't understand. She never had. But that didn't matter anymore. I rolled onto my side, pulling the blanket over me. On the nightstand, the soft glow of my lamp illuminated the corner of the drawer where the $5 bow was tucked away. A reminder, but not a wound. Not anymore. I wasn't who I was last Christmas. And when I closed my eyes, I didn't see the Lexus or the envelope or Sabrina's smirk or my mother's disappointment. I saw a coffee mug handed to me with care, a kind smile, a warm dinner, a world that finally felt like mine. Tomorrow would come. And for the first time in my life, I looked forward to it. By early summer, Louisville had shed its lingering chill and stepped fully into warmth. The air smelled like cut grass and magnolia blooms. Neighbors grilled on balconies. Kids shrieked in sprinklers. And I found myself walking through each day with a steadier heartbeat than I'd ever known. I didn't expect peace to feel this ordinary. It was in the small things, sunlight hitting my kitchen counter just right, watering the plants on my windowsill every morning, soft music echoing through my apartment after work. Even my reflection felt different. Like my shoulders sat a little higher, my eyes a little clearer, my presence a little more solid. That peace didn't erase the past, but it made it smaller, manageable. A shadow behind me instead of a storm overhead. And right in the center of this new version of life was Daniel. He never rushed anything, never pushed, never tried to rewrite my past with platitudes or suggestions. He simply walked beside me, steady and present, making room for me to grow in my own way and my own time. By June, our slow dinners and weekend coffee runs had become a gentle constant. He cooked me pasta in his apartment on lazy Sundays. I introduced him to my favorite used bookstores. He told me I had a way of noticing things most people missed. I told him he had a way of making silence feel like companionship instead of obligation. One warm Sunday afternoon, he invited me to a small farmer's market near the river. We wandered through stalls selling fresh peaches and handmade soaps. I bought a jar of honey infused with lavender. He bought strawberries because, as he said with a shy smile, "You always pause longest at the fruit stand." The breeze picked up, brushing strands of hair across my face. Daniel tucked one behind my ear. Not rushed, not tentative, just soft. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "Do you ever regret leaving?" His voice was careful, as if afraid he might step on fragile ground. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the question, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. "No," I said, "not anymore." He nodded gently, but I could see more questions flickering behind his eyes. So I continued. "I grieved for a while. Not for them, exactly. For the idea of them. For the version of family I always hoped would appear. But leaving, it was the first time I told the truth with my feet. And now I finally feel like I fit in my own life." His expression softened. "I'm really proud of you." The words hit deeper than I expected. Maybe because they were simple. Maybe because he meant them. Maybe because I'd never heard them without conditions attached. I squeezed his hand. "Thank you." But the next moment, something shifted in his face. He looked over my shoulder, eyes widening slightly. "Is that your cousin?" I turned. It was Jennifer walking toward us with a hesitant smile, and beside her, tight-lipped, tense, was my Aunt Denise. My heart jolted, not from fear, but from old muscle memory. The instinct to brace, to shrink, to prepare. But I didn't shrink this time. I stood my ground. Jennifer reached me first. "Emily," she said breathlessly, "I didn't know you'd be here." "I didn't either," I said softly. Her shoulders loosened. "You look good, really good." "Thank you." She stepped aside so her mother could come forward. Aunt Denise looked at me for a long moment, her eyes flickering with something complicated. Guilt, admiration, regret, I wasn't sure. "I wanted to see you," she said finally, "but I didn't want to intrude." "You're not intruding." Her breath shook. "I owe you an apology." My chest tightened. "You don't—" "Yes," she said quickly. "I do." We stood in the middle of the farmer's market, surrounded by peach baskets and vendors calling out prices. The air smelled like strawberries and warm soil. "I knew your parents favored Sabrina," she said. "We all did, but I didn't understand how deep it went until Christmas. And then, after you left, the things your mother said. She swallowed. It wasn't right. None of it was. I felt something shift inside me, something quiet and final. It means a lot to hear that, I said gently. She nodded, eyes watering. I hope someday, maybe, you'll let more of us back into your life. The ones who deserve to be. I considered that for a moment. The old me would have said yes quickly, eager to repair, to accommodate, to perform forgiveness even when I wasn't ready. The new me took a breath and said, I'll let the right people in, slowly. Relief washed over her face. That's all I can ask. We talked a few minutes more before they left. As they walked away, Daniel turned to me. You handled that beautifully. I handled it honestly, I corrected. Same thing, in this case. We walked through the rest of the market in an easy quiet. When we reached the overlook by the river, the water glittering beneath the sun, Daniel stopped and faced me. Emily, he said softly, you're really rebuilding your life. I am. And you're not doing it alone, he added, a little shy now. I felt warmth bloom deep inside me. No, I whispered, I'm not. The summer unfolded like that. Gentle, warm, quietly transformative. I met more people, joined a Saturday hiking group, planted herbs on my balcony, moved through my days with presence instead of fear. And one warm July evening, I found myself on my balcony watching the sun melt into the skyline, thinking about the Christmas that broke me open and gave me back to myself. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at it. A text from Aunt Patricia. I'm making peach cobbler next weekend. Would you like to join me? I smiled. Yes, I typed. I'd love to. I stepped back outside, the sky purple and glowing. Below, the city hummed, alive, bright, full of possibility. Inside, my home felt lived in and warm. And within me was a truth I wished I could whisper to the version of myself who stood beside a Christmas tree that night, humiliated and invisible. You won. You walked away. And walking away saved you. I leaned against the railing and whispered it anyway, just for me. Before I close this chapter, I want to speak directly to whoever is listening to this right now. If you've ever felt like the least loved person in your own home, if you've been told you should be grateful for the crumbs you're given, if you've been made to believe your worth is measured by silence, obedience, or usefulness, I hope my story reminds you of something simple but powerful. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to build a life that finally fits you. If this story touched you, helped you, or made you feel seen, even for a moment, I'd love for you to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. And if you want more stories like this, stories of healing, truth, and quiet transformation, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Your voice matters here. And I'm so glad you're with me.